Chapter 14.
Exhaustion. As Kai sat on the wooden log, he could feel the crackling of the fire send shockwaves down his spine. It wasn't that he was afraid of his immediate environment. Rather, in his relentless anticipation, he feared further sleep deprivation and how merely closing both eyes for just a seemingly small amount of time could send the Berserker into an unapologetic rage. 3 hours passed as his back and shoulders ached. Darkness surrounded him, with small glimpses of the light from the fire breaking forth and flashing onto the whispering trees that, in the frost-laden icy wind, encircled him. 8 hours passed. Kai's intestines began to gurgle, his stomach grumbled. "I have to defecate," he informed the Berserker sitting across from him. With an indifferent look, Fafhrd slowly got up, axe and stone in hand. Continuing to sharpen his blade, he slowly turned around and began walking. "Follow me," Fafhrd muttered coarsely. Kai stood up, and instantly the pain from the stomping of the angry and now dead elk shot into his shoulder and throughout his body. "So then," Kai screamed, "are you coming or not?" Fafhrd spat impatiently. Kai began slowly walking to the outskirts of the glade behind the Berserker as his racing thoughts consumed his inner being. And yet, a sense of complete and total serenity burned within him. This serenity was the feeling he had summoned, or rather, had summoned him, from what could only be the gods before entering the glade the morning prior when he had dragged in his kill. Why serenity? Kai did not know. His head pulsed and his vision narrowed as sweat began dripping down his forehead from the pulsing shoulder that, if not broken, was most certainly shattered in at least 3 places, oozing blood that soaked through his dirty tunic. Fafhrd drew a circle in the outskirts of the glade, laden by leaves, and looking directly into Kai's eyes said, "If you at any point in time move outside this circle when relieving yourself, I will cut your fingers off before your head." Kai barely heard him as he exerted most of his energy, considering how he was going to manage to stay up for a week. Should he count? Should he sing? Should he pray? These thoughts consumed him, but the beast within thought of one word and one word only: Viking. Bending down, Kai shit in the circle drawn for him and dragged his left slumping shoulder back to the log behind the Berserker, who, after sitting down, continued sharpening his axe. Screed, screed. Winter was here, and the morning dew that Kai remembered the morning of his path's beginning only days prior had transformed into merciless frost. Snow began to fall. Each snowflake drop was a crystal sting on the clothes that hugged his skin next to a fire that was blasting heat waves and smoke onto his face. The pulsing in his shoulder continued as it beat in unison with his pulsating heart. It was nightfall. 4 more hours passed. Dawn began to creep up as Kai had now been up for 24 hours. Normally staying up this long would be easy. That is, if he had a full stomach and his body wasn't screaming and burning with severe and painful sensations. It was the injuries he had sustained, coupled with an empty stomach, that made sleep, that ever simple and blissful escape from any kind of painful reality, more and more appealing. The thought of death, conversely, kept his adrenaline pumping and his eyes open. His mind began to drift. "Where is Tora?" he wondered. "Tora is here," he heard himself respond in thought. Silence ensued. 6 more hours passed. 30 total hours had gone by. Suddenly, his stomach began to turn as his eyes got heavier. He was told he would be fed twice a day. Where was his food? "Fafhrd, when can I eat?" Kai, barely hearing his own voice, gasped. Something in Fafhrdd's expression changed. His face transformed into gleeful gratification, in much the same way a warrior does when his enemy begs for mercy in battle or is soon to be subdued by the sword. "You're hungry, Kai? Of course you can eat. Bard told you twice a day, did he not?" Getting up, Fafhrd moved the log he sat on and pulled out from under it a wooden bowl wrapped in cloth. "Scouse is served. Don't get up, I'll bring it to you," the Berserker grunted as he stood up, walked around the fire to Kai, and held out the wooden bowl. Without giving any second thought, Kai reached out with his functioning right arm and took hold of the sustenance in front of him. Looking down into the bowl, he saw red mush. Carrots, turnips, herbs, and lamb mixed with red cabbage. The stew appeared to contain more liquid than the typical scouse, but Kai, in his exhaustion, pain, and hunger, did not care. It was food. Raising the bowl to his lips, he drank from the savory and strangely bitter-tasting cup.